Welcome to another video on the Litchfield Media YouTube channel. I'm your host, Melissa Litchfield, your go-to person for all things marketing, digital advertising, sales funnels for course creators, digital product owners, and product-based businesses. Today, I have a special video for you because we're chatting all about webinar softwares. We're gonna be chatting about my top 3 most favorite webinar softwares that others are using in this space today. Personally, I've used these softwares myself, working with my own clients, but we're gonna break down the top 3 best webinar softwares to live launch your course or your digital products to your audience. We're gonna be breaking down price, the pros and cons, but before we go into those features of each individual 3 softwares, I wanted to go over some specifics that you need to think about before making your final decision on which software you wanna settle on. The best webinar software allows you to put your own tracking code on the back end of the software. So you can track leads from Meta if you're running ads to a particular webinar, or you want to place your own tracking like Google Analytics on the actual webinar platform. Another feature that you wanna make sure the webinar software has is the ability to redirect to a different URL, say after they opt in and register for your actual free event. So the ability or capability to redirect to your own URL or your own domain is an added benefit as well. And last but not least, you wanna make sure that the webinar software that you are paying for and utilizing for your webinars is actually gonna give you the analytics that you need. So before we go into the top 3 webinar softwares that I personally love and I'm gonna recommend to you today, I wanna make sure that you know the specific analytics that you will need in order to analyze how well your webinar performed, because some of these softwares give you kind of like the bare bones or the bare minimum of metrics. So 1, you wanna make sure that the webinar software is tracking total number of registrants. 2, you also want to make sure that the software is tracking total number of people that showed up live or any evergreen webinar attendees that are attending each evergreen session. 3, you want to make sure that this webinar software is tracking all attendees or registrants at any given point in time throughout your webinar recording. So basically what this means is you want the ability to see the number of registrants at each minute or time point within your webinar recording. So at any given time, you wanna be able to hover over the video and you should be able to see the amount of registrants that are at each step and point in time throughout your webinar recording. You don't want necessarily a webinar engagement rate. That's not gonna help us too much, because if we wanna really pinpoint where people are dropping off, if the software is just giving us an overall percentage of the engagement rate, it's not very helpful to analyzing how well your webinar actually performed. And the last metric you want to make sure is that if the webinar allows you to provide some sort of free resource or download that you're sharing with your attendees or registrants, you want to be able to see how many people actually clicked or downloaded that free resource. Okay, so now that we've gone through some specific metrics that you want to be looking for in order to make your final decision before investing in a webinar software, I'm going to share with you my top 3 favorites. Number 1, Webinar Jam. This one has been around for quite some time. It's tried and true, and it is a little more pricier, especially their sister platform, which is specifically for evergreen webinars. It's called Webinar, but Webinar Jam is great to start off with because it comes out to be, with the annual plan, around $79 per month. Now, keep in mind, you're not gonna need Webinar Jam for life, so you can always cancel once you're done with your live launch iterations of running your live webinars and getting them solid and having a solid conversion rate before switching over to an evergreen software. But Webinar Jam will give you all the basics that you need. It will give you all of the basic features that you'll need, specifically for the $79 per month platform option. This gives you up to 100 live attendees. So unless you're spending a crazy amount on ad spend and you're not necessarily you're gonna have a smaller live launch, then I think the $79 per month option with 100 live attendees is perfect. You can share links, you can share PDFs, you can chat live with attendees. So all the basic features that you'll need, plus the analytics after the actual webinar is done and said with. You'll be able to go back to your webinar recording and look at the analytics and metrics from there. Okay, second software that I wanna share with you today is called Easy Webinar. So a lot of my clients also have utilized this particular platform. Trust me, I've used so many others in the past. I mean, these are really the top free software. So Easy Webinar is another competitor of Webinar Jam. Easy Webinar comes out to be $98 per month for around the same amount of live attendees for Webinar Jam, so a little bit pricier, but you're still gonna get very similar features and benefits to Webinar Jam. Again, remember, you're not gonna need this software for life. This is just while you're live launching and really honing in and solidifying that particular webinar so you get the highest conversion rate possible before you turn it evergreen. And last but not least, we're chatting all about the last webinar software on the list, which is Sequel.io. This is a newer one that's popping up in the online space, and more top thought leaders are actually using this software. I was just speaking with Sophia Amoruso the other day, and turns out that she's using this webinar software platform too. I did notice that Amy Porterfield was using it during one of her past launches, live launches earlier this year. What I thought was cool about this software is that you can actually embed the webinar video on your actual website or domain page. Sequel is going to run you a little bit more than the other two softwares that I mentioned, around $125 per month, but it does seem like you'll be able to utilize this software for live and evergreen recordings of your webinars. All right, that wraps up our video today, all on webinar softwares, my go-to top 3 that I'm recommending for you guys today. And those were Webinar Jam, Easy Webinar, and Sequel.io. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.